Yes, I was just in conversation with a client earlier today, and really tuning into her subtle body and default settings, which we all have. We tend to go into default sometimes when we get what we want to, because maybe we don't think that we deserve it, or it's too fast, or it's too strong, or whatever. We just get into old patterns sometimes when things arrive full on.
Yeah.
And also, the subtlety of our energy when we don't feel that we deserve something, we can actually project that into our experience for people and environments to feel into that and not want to fully give us what we want because of our energy frequency. So some of the work that we did with her today, she's like brilliant. She's so smart. Like so many amazing things to say about her. And I was like, we're going to get out of your head, and we're going to get into your subtle body. And when we tuned in into the solar plexus in the throat, it's like when our solar plexus is blocked, when we're trying to control what's happening, we block our creativity, we block our power, and through our voice, the projection, the frequency of our voice doesn't land in the same way when we're in communication to others, and it doesn't penetrate, which allows people maybe not to trust our words because we blocked our power from trying to control. And then it's just like this whole whirlwind of experiences that come from it. So as you're mentioning this, I'm like, control, solar plexus, like release in our throat and our voice and our frequency. And are we going to allow ourselves to fully receive what we're calling in, or are we going to block and try to control it?
Oh man. This is huge. Everything that you just said is just purely brilliant and ingenious. So thank you for bringing all of that forward. Oh, this is so good. There's so many subtle facets to this, well, to reality creation, to what we experience, to what we allow. And oh man. So yes. So there an interesting insight. Well, it's come through many times, but it was coming up again this morning, and this may be why, because we were all dancing in the same field of energy, but around surrendering all control to gain ultimate power and influence.
That's exactly what we were talking about in our session.
Yes.
The power of yourself, opening, surrendering to influence.
Huge, because we're trusting completely instead of trying to control, which gives us ultimate power, because in the trusting of it, so it's essentially like we're opening to source. So imagining that it's not a person or a thing that has any type of control over us, if we can open to it as if it were source itself, because it is, then everything will naturally unfold in harmonic resonance with the highest timeline, with the highest expression of love, with the highest outcome that relationship, experience, opportunity has to provide for us. But if we go in and try to control it out of fear, which all stems from unworthiness, I don't deserve it, so maybe I need to do something to get in here and control, instead of just being open and embodied in our full power, which is trust. I mean, and trust graduated into a knowing, into absolute certainty that if I open to source, then source will lavish me with love and abundance and beauty and all the things that I desire and am inherently worthy of receiving. But if I don't believe that, then I'm going to go into tactics or even patterns. So this is a huge one too, is projecting our patterns onto the situations, also out of past experiences and past memories and all of this, and what we forecast may happen or unfold because of previous experiences. So there's so many different dynamics to it.
And what I like to call default setting. Our default settings are which bring us into fight or flight and get us to do things that aren't necessarily aligned with how we want to feel and show up and what we want to cultivate and bring in. But we go there. But we don't allow the openness of so I almost think of it, we were talking about a tornado recently. I don't remember if it was during a recording or just us jamming about it. And I was like, I feel like I'm in a tornado right now. And you're like, I literally saw a tornado out my window recently or whatever. We were talking about tornadoes. Yeah. And it's like when we're in the tornado, when things are happening that feel like we can't control it, we can do two things. We can try to control a tornado, which I don't know, doesn't seem like a good idea to me, right? Things are sorting for you to show you things clearly so that you can be open and pick and choose how you want to create and be. So you can try to control it, which creates more tightness, lack of power. You're going to get wound up in the tornado, wound up in the energy that's just not your frequency, old behavior, old patterns, all the things that don't serve you. Or you can just be like, there's a tornado or there's something happening at me and it feels like a threat, but it's not. You just open up and you receive. And then when the dust settles, you can see things clearly and know that needed to happen for you to move to your next location. Whether the experience is super positive and you're excited and then fear comes in, or if it's fear-based at the beginning, it's going to turn into a positive experience. So it's about opening to the tornado, breathing, not trying to control, and that is where your power comes in because you can see things clearly and choose where you want to play rather than being on default, which is powerless and disconnected.
Yeah, and totally connected into the patterns of the mind instead of surrendering to allow that power flow to actually course through us, which can feel, I mean, it can, when it's all coming in like that, it's so, in my experience, it feels like a rapture. It feels like actual waves of ecstasy. So it's like, man, you know, viscerally, somatically allowing that to come in and course through and penetrate and fill my body, and then to allow myself to express the intelligence that it brings through it, because it's the power of the light. And so it has all this creative, activated intelligence it also wants to express, and then allowing myself to give that into the world without, you know, completely unbridled, without any filters, and just allowing that pure flow. And that synchronizes, I mean, things beyond our wildest dreams, beyond what we can conceive or imagine possible for ourselves. So it's really about being in the flow of that and trusting it. And, you know, when you're talking about the tornado, it's fascinating because two have manifested since I've been in town. And the one, man, it was just so gorgeous. And I felt her before she was here and I knew it was coming. And then it popped up, you know, on the news and all the sirens were going off. And instead of, you know, running into my basement and and taking shelter, which, you know, would have been probably the logical, realistic, you know, thing to do, I went to the top level of my space and opened up all the windows and I just surrendered to it. And there's something
Don't do this at home.
What was that?
If you're watching, don't do this at home.
No. Well, but here's the thing though. Well, don't do this at home. And there's a potent, palpable, mystical intelligence that is available in that type of an energetic field, an energetic vortex that then gives us influence with the elements. Because if I go and I surrender to the tornado and I say, I trust you explicitly, I'm here for this, I'm surrendered into you, that tornado will work with us, co-create with us, dance with us, and it will not harm us. And so we can look at that as a physical tornado, or we can look at it at the energetics of life. So if I can surrender to the tornado when it's happening and allow it and just be open fully to it, trusting its movements, allowing it to come through, and whether it's clearing out and cleaning up or if it's infusing us with new life, all of that, if we can just move with it, there won't be any pain or struggle. But if we try to resist it or hide from it or contract our energy in some way, then it creates the opposing effect. So yeah, I wouldn't say try that at home unless you're adept with energetics. Yeah. Because I just inherently knew, and I have a capacity to telepathically communicate with animals, with elements, with nature, and all of that, and I'm very seasoned at that, and so I definitely wouldn't recommend that as a practice trial. But we have that power. That is how extraordinary and wondrous our power truly is, and if we can apply those energetics to the co-creation process and allow ourselves to receive fully what is coming in for us and stay open to receiving fully what is coming in for us, it'll just take us down this gorgeous stream of just synchronicities and miracles and surprises and things lining up in ways that are completely exponential and non-linear, nothing that our mind could have orchestrated. It's because it's such a higher dimensional octave of energy and power and intelligence that we can only truly see it when we're open to it fully. Then it reveals its wisdom to us. Then it reveals its gnosis and its mechanics and its intelligence. really in a really quite precise and clean way. But when we're, you know, just in our human self and we're in our mind, it's not really, in that state, it's not possible to see fully the architecture of it all, because we're not open into the greater octave of it. We're just in our, you know, however far we've allowed ourselves to expand out, we're in some way limited to that framework until we just whoosh, and then we stay open. So the key is to stay open. Then once we open, to not contract, but to continue allowing ourselves to move with that flow, to allow that flow to move us.
Wow. I have to jump in here and share. So a couple of years ago, I was hosting a retreat in Bali, and I've done them in a lot of different places, and I was so excited about this retreat. And a friend of mine who's very deep into astrology, she's like, you have to go on these dates. And I'm like, okay, I'll definitely go on these dates, right? And I was looking at some other dates before. I'm like, nope, these dates feel really, really good. And so we go to Bali, and when I'm going there, I literally don't know if the retreat's going to happen because both of the volcanoes are active. And there's like these warnings that if you're stuck on the island, you're going to be stuck there for like maybe a month because airplanes can't, you know, leave or enter because it will actually crash the airplane because of all of the particles in the air from the volcano erupting. So I went anyways. I was like, well, I'm going. And I went, and there was only one or two people who didn't end up coming on the retreat because their employers or whatever their responsibilities, if they were to get stuck there, it would really affect their businesses. But everyone else showed up, and the volcanoes were safe when we were there. And then a few weeks later, they like totally erupted, and there was some chaos for sure. But everyone during the retreat was like, I feel so safe. I feel so taken care of. And I won't get into all of the details of everything because you have to be more into like my inner circle kind of thing for me to go there with you because belief systems, whatever. But I will tell you this. The weather, when I was teaching, when I was channeling, when I was flowing, when I was in my space with the participants, the weather was changing with whatever I was speaking and teaching. And it was so obvious that people were like, what's going on? And this comes back to, as you're saying, which just illuminated something for me, the power of surrendering and being opening and trusting. And also when I think of our feminine power, we are just as powerful as Mother Nature. And in those moments, when I was just in my flow and noticing and not judging or thinking I am something that, not making a story about it, I was just in like awe. And there was one moment, okay, we're underneath of this hut when we were in this space. It was raining, it was sunny, it was all these things, it was windy. And I remember this one moment where I was like, okay, now just let it flush away. Let it move away like a swoop over you. And as soon as I said that, a flock of birds a couple inches over everyone's back underneath of the hut. And I remember being like, I can't even make this stuff up.
Right.
And that is the power of knowing your own power, being open, surrendering, being in your truth, following your path, and being in the flow and magic of life and co-creation, because everything is happening for you, not against you. If you're open, if you're listening, if you're not trying to control and change, because I went there with a curriculum of what I was going to teach, and guess what? I didn't teach any of it. I was just in flow, and people left. I have a testimonial, seriously, Solara, on my YouTube channel, and I don't even know if it's there anymore. This woman's like, Deidre is effing crazy. She's crazy because she was in the experience. I'm like, it's not me. It was, we co-created it.
Yeah.
But that's it. This is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And that can't, we can't plan that or orchestrate that with our logical mind.
That's wild.
And there's so much glory and beauty and power and influence. So that's that influence that we were talking about when you were just open and everything was moving around you, because consciousness and energy is so malleable, and beings with more awakened intelligence have influence over, so beings being any type of element of nature or any of this. So a more aware and awake being has more free will, has more influence than a being that is less awakened and aware to its own intelligence, to its own power. And that's, oh man, it's phenomenal. It's awe-striking. It's pure glory moving through us. And it's like the best transformations happen when we're just available for it, when we're available to be channels and transmitters and receivers and givers of that intelligence and of that flow. And oh man, yeah, it's just so incredibly profound and powerful. And it works the same way with manifesting our desires. With everything that we desire to experience inside of our reality, and just staying open to it and trusting it. Because how many times have you done, I've done this, I'm literally asking how many times you have done this, where you've asked for the thing and it's come in and you've either been afraid of it, or you've pushed it away, or you've become attached to it in some way, instead of just allowing that flow to continue moving through and birthing it into the fullness of what it can be, into its highest expression. So instead of allowing it to reveal its beauty, we try to stamp our ideas of what we want to have happen onto it, or what we think is happening onto it. So those projections again, and those are subtleties of the mind, because it's like I can project a pattern of my own, or a vision, or a program, or a lens even of perception based on past memories and experiences onto it, or I can try to transmorph it into what I want it to be, instead of allowing it to just emerge and reveal its own beauty.
Yes. I just download on a few things personally. Wow, it's so wild. I'm the kind of person where I manifest something. I remember, well, I won't get into specifics right now because it's lots happening. I could talk about it for a day. But actually, like, wanting to be out of a situation, a pattern I was in. This is a couple years ago, and being like, I need a really clear sign, because I can be really stubborn, or let's just say I like to really have proof of something, potency, for me to change directions when I'm in a pattern I've been unconsciously in for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm not the only one out there, but so I remember I always had these really interesting moments with mirrors and reflections. Yeah. I remember when I first got invited to Burning Man a couple of years ago, and it was the busiest time in my business. I had every reason not to go to Burning Man. And then I was walking by my mirror one day, and it's like my soul like stopped me. I looked at myself in the mirror, and all of a sudden I got a download of, the reason why you don't want to go is because you are scared of the amount of liberation and self-expression and just openness that could happen here. And I was coming out of a time in my life a year before that where I felt really, I kind of felt trapped in a lot of ways. And so I said yes. I said, okay, yep, I'm going to do it. I said yes, even before I had any moments to figure it out that it wasn't going to work, because there was all these reasons. Got the ticket in the mail, went there, had a crazy experience. It was amazing. So I called that in. But where I was wanting to go before I got into that was, I was walking downtown Vancouver after transitioning, wanting to transition out of a pattern I was in. And I looked at myself in this reflection, and I was like, I need a really big sign to manifest in order for me to end something that I'm really comfortable in. And it was a relationship. And next thing you know, I manifested a really strong sign that I couldn't ignore, and I had to take action on it. And it's just like, you ask for it, you shall receive, because your word is law.
Yes. 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 Oh man. Yep. And there you go. And then you get the opportunity to follow through on that on that guidance, on the guidance, on what's revealed, what you're seeing, what you're being called into. And I love that you mentioned around being open and self-expression and liberation, because man, it feels like it's our greatest fear and our greatest desire simultaneously, to liberate, to be self-expressed, to expand into that euphoria and ecstasy of feeling and actually resonating our own power flow. So it's like, will we allow and will we go for it before our mind steps in and goes, and here's all the practical reasons, the quote from Jim Carrey just came through as I was saying that. I forget what he says. Something is fear disguised as practicality, but how often do we do that? How often do we, logistics our way out of probably the greatest gifts of our own life, instead of just going, oh, practically speaking, this is why this may not work, or based on past experiences, this is why this may not work, or even forecasting into the future, trying to calculate out all of those steps, instead of just receiving the sign, feeling it, knowing it, getting that knowing, it's just an instant where you get that knowing, and then trusting it and following through on it, even when the cognitive patterns start to rise and fall. So when any type of surface level cognitive pattern comes in, can we just trust that inherent knowing anyways and move through that and allow all of that to start filtering out of our system? And can that become our new normal, to thrive into that, to thrive in the flow of possibility and potential and abundance and beauty and magic and the love that is available to us, and just notice and become really self-aware when all the things that aren't that come up, and identify what those things are for us. That's been something that's really intriguing for me, is to notice all the places and spaces where I may have closed off to love before, or not allowed it fully, or pushed away, or tried to be independent instead of just allowing myself to unfold fully and blossom into it and receive it as an emanation of pure source presenting itself inside of my reality for me to enjoy and immerse in and give to, and all of that. So that has been a fascinating thing, to just notice that and be like, man, wow, I was really doing that for such a long time. And it wasn't super duper obvious, because they were, normal things that we, like normal, whatever that means.
Normal. Viable ways of being.
Yeah, I mean, in our society, like all the reasons to not trust, all the reasons to not just open fully and move into the wildness and the rawness of that flow as it presents itself, and to just be completely taken by the dance of that cosmic intelligence. And they're all highly practical reasons that make a lot of sense. So it was great to just be able to witness it and just go, wow. I mean, and as I've been being with these parts of myself most recently, I feel this sense of curiosity and joy and just fascination as I'm witnessing them being just cleared out of my system. I'm like, wow. And thankful for it too. And obviously feeling the waves of, at some points, I wouldn't be overwhelmed, but it's like that mixture between anxiety and excitement. It's like, it's an exhilaration that comes through, like I'm riding a roller coaster. I'm like, wow, because all of it's just getting cleared out as more and more truth just emerges through me.
And so the first step of this is to really, because I get this question all the time, is how do I know the difference between my gut, like fear, and my intuition? And so it's really like when our intuition, it's like, it's the first feeling that we have. Yeah. So if you were to tell me something and I'm like, I'm excited about it. Like Burning Man, at that time, there was an excitement, but then there was a no because of everything that came in afterwards, right?
Yep.
So first there was a yes, and then it was no. So if you're excited, if something feels like a yes right away, that is your intuition saying yes. If it's a no right away, but intellectually you're making it a yes, careful. Yes. So what I've had to train myself on is to listen to the first feeling I have and make that work for me. And it's been challenging because sometimes everything that we see and hear and the thoughts that we have are telling us that what we're feeling is wrong, but our body is so intelligent beyond measure that anytime we go against it, it is going to show us the truth eventually. And to be totally honest, just going like pretty full on, is the first time I had a massive awakening with intuition was the night that I was raped when I was 19 years old. And I knew the day before something was off. My body was trying to communicate something to me the day before it happened. Moments before it happened, my body did not want to go where I was going, but everything I heard, saw, and everything else, practically, it was like, it's so safe.
Yeah.
And so many of us humans are not listening to our gut.
Yeah.
We are listening to our mind, or our gut is saying no, our mind is saying yes, or vice versa. And then we wonder why we don't feel in our power and why we're not able to fully express ourselves and trust ourselves, because power comes from trusting yourself, and expression comes from also fully trusting yourself and taking action on what you trust. And when we don't take action on what we trust, this is something, a theme that comes up a lot with the women that I worked with, is I don't know what to do, or I'm not sure. And I'm like, the only reason you don't feel in your power and you're not trusting what you feel is because you haven't been acting on what you already know.
Yeah, that's huge. That statement in and unto itself is huge on so many different levels. But everything that you just shared is so fully loaded on.
Yeah, I felt like
it really is so loaded, man, because there's so many nuances and intricacies wrapped up in everything that you just so beautifully, powerfully spun. Man, so 3 seconds, first 3 seconds, what's your initial instinct? How do you initially feel? And also, so yeah, just the first 3 seconds, what's that initial response, and going with that? And then there's another element of building trust over time if we are still learning to open. So, and that is represented through, so what I look for is resonance that flows all the way through in a situation. So is it aligned, heart, mind, body, soul, words, tone? Is it action, and is it followed through? That's the biggest part, is all of this followed up with action. So depending on the situation, sometimes we have to make those snap choices, in which case this is where presence is so powerful, so that you can even hear your intuition in your gut and feel your gut in the first place, so that you can make those quick rapid fire moves when you need to do so. And in other situations, we have time to open and explore and unfold and release, and all of the things that we have to do to potentially open to something. But there was so around the body intuition and the body's knowing, this is something that I have contemplated and played with so many times, because every experience that we have is viscerally stored in our body. So sometimes trusting our gut is trusting a pattern. And so it's very, very valuable to be super consciously plugged in to ourselves and self-aware to know. And even if that's the case, any type of opening or unfolding requires a safe environment. So if the initial gut feeling is, no, this doesn't feel safe, I don't trust it, I feel called to contract, then either there's work to be done, and it may not be to do with the actual situation, it may be to do with our own unwinding of traumas and patterns and all of that. So in either regard, safety is of utmost importance to facilitate that, but it's good to be aware of what the difference is, because then if we do facilitate that for ourselves in a safe space, we may be able to potentially go into a situation that's really good for us that we would have been blocking based on out of fear responses, out of viscerally stored patterns that are in our cellular memory. So yeah, noticing the difference between all of that and going, okay, is this actually really good for me? And I'm contracting because of scenarios that have arisen for me in my life experience up until this point, or is it truly unsafe? And so, yeah, go ahead.
The subtlety there is an interesting space. So there's our initial reaction to something, our gut. So for example, as I was sharing about my experience, my gut was telling me something was off even before something happened. And it was like but there were no triggers, nothing I saw, body sensation, there were no triggers from a past experience that would have allowed me to feel that way. And this is where like self-awareness comes in. And it can be really tricky when we're in an experience. Actually, I think this is really beneficial that I share this. I recently found two dualities that I have been struggling with for my life. We're born into the world. We have two dualities usually that we have in our life, and we're constantly floating between the two, and it's just our struggles in our lifetime. And so what I realized is I am open. I'm so open, but to the wrong people sometimes, based on past programming. And I've been closed to people who I should be open to. And there was that awareness of like, I should be more open. I should be more inviting to this environment or these people. And it's something I've had to reprogram and train. And we talked about discernment and opening and closing and all the things. But it's interesting for us to look at our triggers and our programmings, but also know, is this actually like, has this person or this environment or this thing proved itself consistently to me that it's safe, but I'm still not allowing myself to be open here? And that is not necessarily your intuition. It comes from maybe a pattern or trigger trauma. So thank you for bringing that up. Like, that's really important to explore, because sometimes we can just shut down and it's just not healthy.
Right. And then continue to choose things that are actually what are creating that pattern in the first place, that we're trying to evolve beyond or expand beyond. It's like the notion of choosing like the bad, thrilling, exciting thing instead of what's truly healthy and resonant and safe and aligned and flourishing and will help us to grow and evolve. Because I've been in that pattern before, certainly. Let's go for the quick hit. Let's go for the quick hit of exhilaration instead of the thing that's true and lasting and safe and embracive. So it's good to be aware of that too, because that's a great indicator of how much we value and love ourselves and how well we're able to recognize the quality within our own being and within, the external in any way, whether it's environment or relationship or lifestyle choices and patterns and all of that. Is this of the highest quality for my being, for my health, for my thrival, and choosing in that way.
Yes. And this goes back to all of the conversations we've been having are all connected, and they need to be connected because they're all supporting each other. So it goes back to our last conversation and the conversation before that of settling, or the power of not settling, because this is where we're able to consciously choose what we want to, where we want to play, what we want to engage in, and what we want to create in. We cannot fully bring in what we desire if we are still holding on to something that isn't it. So this would be like, so I'm just going to use relationships because it just feels really like so many people are talking about this springtime is like prime time for people breaking up. And I feel like everyone I know is breaking up. And so it's just great. It's great for us, great content. But it's like, you can't keep going back to an ex who is not a good fit for you if you want to call in the one.
Right.
You can't keep eating crappy food once a week or twice a week that you're allergic to if you want to feel really good in your body. You can't keep going to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning when you want to be a morning bird or whatever they call it.
Early bird.
Like, you have to let go of the things that you think you're holding on to for comfort as you make the leap to the next thing, because that very thing that you're holding on to, you're projecting into the universe the frequency that actually this is what I want.
Yes.
You're going to continue need to manifest more and more of that in all areas of your life. The settling, the 80% of what you want, where that 20% is actually really important to you, but you're pretending it's not because you're settling. You have to let it go and have a clean slate in order to attract.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yes, that's huge.
Power.
And that's like the most, this is great when it comes to quantum leaping and quantum acceleration, because the minute that you decide, and I mean decide with firmness and with devotion, to release that thing and step into something new, your desires will start flying into your reality. And that's part of the encouragement that I have learned in my reality. When something's not working or it's not quite aligned, to let it go, because I'm like, then what I truly desire can just whoosh, magnetize into me, into my reality. And it happens so quickly that it then becomes a bit exciting to let go of the thing that's not working. And I also have a rule of never going back. I don't ever go back under any circumstance to previous relationships. The love is always there, the tenderness, the warmth, and the appreciation for all of its lessons and all of that. But I just simply, that's a rule that I have, and it keeps things really seamless, because it's just.
Yes. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that, because if it's in your past, if you keep bringing it into the present, it's not your past and you're just recreating, it's not a clean slate.
Right.
You just can't be a clean slate that way. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we're infinite creators. We have this potential to open into, yes, clean slate, brand new creation, everything that we want and desire, and so much beyond that, that is exuding from us at the level of soul, giving off these frequencies of what we truly desire. And you know, you can, it is an option always to try to be with something and try to rework it into, but you could also just open to having the thing delivered to you in perfect resonance and harmony and agreement. And that is available. Oh man. So why not, you know, create spaces to allow for that and live into that.
Ooh. And on that note of, it doesn't even have to be relationships, but just in general, I think so I used to have resistance to going back to the past in any way, shape, or form. Like I was like, you know, the past is the past. I'm just gonna, it's done. Like I was like, I'm just gonna move on. And I feel like there's a power in revisiting the past if you haven't completed something, so that you can heal and move on. So it's like that balance. And I love that rule that you have. I think it's so wonderful. And I remember having a lot of like shame or resistance and not actually giving myself permission to heal from things in the past and pushing them away so far that I was still carrying it with me in my body. And it was still like energy leaks that I wasn't fully aware of. And I think there's no shame in going back, but what is your purpose? What is your why behind it? And that will be different for everyone. And so I just wanted to bring that up, because it's okay to revisit your past, because sometimes you have to revisit your past in order to move forward. But it's like, what is your why behind your behavior? And I think that's just something I can ask myself more often is, why am I going back to something or a pattern? Is there something I need to investigate or complete or accelerate or dissolve or heal? Or am I just doing it from an old pattern of comfort? And then that's the no. That's a strong no for me. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a lot of value in that.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a clear distinguishment too between choosing our past and going back into those scenarios in our physical reality and selecting them, and then revisiting them for resolution and bringing them to completion. And it's something else I want to bring through too. So my rule is to not go back into relationship with ex-partners. That's my rule. But it's not about, because I've seen things heal in profound ways in relationships too. So it's not that I wouldn't allow, I mean, I'm friends with all of my exes. And so, you know, on some level, doesn't mean we're in constant contact with one another, but we have love and accord between us. So bringing that through too, because that's something that happens in family relationships. And it's also something that happens in love relationships. We're called to maybe move out of that relationship in its previous expression, move forward, not choose to go back into it in that way. But that doesn't mean that we can't still maintain that relationship as a different expression of itself. And I mean, ultimately, that's just a personal preference. That doesn't mean that that's something that anybody who's listening has to select for themselves.
Yeah. And you know what? Not everyone's going to be open to a tornado like you. Like I appreciate that, and I think that's wonderful. But I tell you, if a tornado was coming at me, no matter what my experience was in Bali or with nature, I'm probably going to go for shelter. I'm not going to be like, I'm going to be a Solara right now. I'm going to like, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's not for, it's always based on what is correct for the individual, and only the individual can discern what that is and interpret what that is for themselves. But I just knew in that moment that I was fine. So it didn't bother me at all. It actually felt really, a profound force field and vortex of peace, just profound peace and beauty. And I would even say a little bit of marvel and astonishment was opened up, because I could feel the power of it, but I knew that I was safe. I just knew. I would have felt it if I wasn't. So, and then I would have acted differently. But just, you know, hyper tuned into those types of things in my experience. But yeah, in any of these scenarios that we're talking about, and I think the beauty of us addressing it all from so many dynamic facets is that it's so contingent upon the individual, and even like their frames and their constructs and their visceral memories and all of this, and what, you know, each of our independent individual experiences and what we're working through, because our entire reality is a mirror of our consciousness. So whether it's mirroring our unconscious to us, whether it's mirroring our patterns, or whether it's mirroring our divinity and our superconscious intelligence to us, is all just contingent upon our own embodiment and what we have, say, ascended through, cultivated, immersed in, all of that. And that's so highly unique. Oh, yeah. We're all these gorgeous kaleidoscopes, and there's so many prismatic spectrums to that kaleidoscope that there is no one size fits all or one correct answer solution for anyone. But what we can do is present perspectives, and, you know, the right ones. I always find, and this is the beauty of these conversations that I love so much, is that people who are tuning in, which we love you guys so much, and thank you for being with us, is that people will pick up the gems and jewels and treasures that resonate with them in the moment, and they'll receive what they are meant to and that they need to receive at that time. And maybe they'll receive something different at a later time or at a different time. And it works that way into each of us. I mean, even if I look at when I'm, you know, reading something or learning something, I always pick up, you know, the drops and the nuggets of wisdom that I most need at that time. And sometimes when I revisit things, I'll pick up a whole different layer or depth or dimension of the teaching that I wasn't open and available to before. So yeah, that's so transient.
Yeah. And that's the thing, we're always changing. If I were to watch this conversation a few years ago, I might just be like, Solara's nuts. Like, who is this witch? I mean, like maybe more than 5 years ago, because I did some of this deeper work like 5+ years ago. Let's say 10 years ago. If I were to tune into this video and come in, start watching when you're talking about the tornado, I would be like, whoa, like this girl is really wild. She's like extreme. And a lot of our conversation I wouldn't be ready for, but I would probably be open enough to listen to it. And then I'd be like, that was an experience. Or like, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I got something from it, because I wasn't there yet. I wasn't in the experience, and my life is so different now than it was 10 years ago. But there have been seeds that were planted 10 years ago that now I get and I live by. But before, it was like not the same energy frequency at all.
Yeah.
I wasn't open. So
yeah, and I mean, that's true for each of us at different phases of our journey, because whatever our field or our frequency bandwidth is, we're only able to perceive at that level or within that realm until we have a greater awareness. And the beauty is, the more we expand, the more we can perceive. So what does he say, Ken Wilber? We include and transcend. And that's exactly what happens. Is so you include all the information of the previous cycle or, you know, phase of growth, and then you transcend it, and then there's more, and then there's more, and then there's more. And so it's the same for each of us, looking at information from different vantage points, you know. And it's so fascinating because there's so much work that I know myself, and anybody who's a grid worker, a light worker of any kind who's plugged into this has done as well. Just planetary activations for at least the last decade to raise collective consciousness to a certain degree of perception so that we can start doing this more. And you can just see it exploding within the last 2 or 3 years, more and more people rising up, having these awarenesses, you know, everything's coming online, and it's like, wow. And so now we're all helping each other. But there was a lot of, you know, behind the scenes, planetary activations, consciousness activations that had to take place to help the totality of we to open into these fields of higher dimensional perception so that we could, cooperate really is what it ultimately comes to, so that we could cooperate. And it's funny because there's a few people that have been just beloved companions and friends and people who tune into my work for so long, and they would tune in, and it was so funny because most recently there was a beautiful woman. She's been with me for at least 5 years. She's like, I always have followed your stuff and tuned in and plugged in, and there's so many pieces that I got, and that's like what kept me coming. But there's so many pieces that I wasn't able to fully receive, but I wanted to. And she's like, now I get it, and I'm so thankful. Wow. So it just took like a little bit of time and space for whatever she needed to have unfold in her journey for her to resonate on that bandwidth that she could also receive that information. So if we just look at it, these fields of perception as frequency bandwidths, and you'll notice this too, when you're in a certain mood, you can channel. You channel differently depending on how you feel and what octave of consciousness you're vibrating at, what resonance, what bandwidth, because whatever bandwidth we're resonating at is the information that we're tuned into, we're receiving, we're perceiving, and we're emanating. And so, you know, raising our frequency, it's about raising our music, really, ultimately our internal tone, our internal music. And as we awaken, shake off the dust and awaken all of our creative potential, all of our symphonic, you know, all the tonalities that are present within us, we gain access to all these different dimensions of intelligence, really, to perceive from. And it's, you know, it was the same for me when I had my very first awakening when I was 24 years old. The first book that came to me was Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And like, I would say a good 85 to 90% of it, I totally got. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. Because when I had the awakening, all of that just, it just like came on board and downloaded to me. But there are pieces that I didn't get, but my logical, rational mind was trying to figure them out. And I didn't realize that it was something that had to be received through direct felt perception at the level of soul. And through the direct felt perception, the information was revealed within me. And so it was trying to even perceive at different levels of awareness, like my mind trying to figure out and analyze and like, oh, but that's not the way that works. It's a soul understanding.
And also, just to add to what you're saying about the mind trying to figure something out, when we're too much in the mind, and I know for me, I've definitely been there, and I see it in my clients as well. It's almost a way of saying I accept this or not to be true, when it's not one of those things, because a lot of these universal truths, it's not. We can't say it's true or not until we experience it, and then it's just like, oh, I get it.
Yes.
And so what I find is when we're in the mind too much with this kind of work, and we're like, I accept it or I don't accept it, at least from my experiences, is we're choosing to accept what we understand. And if we don't understand, then it's not real. But that's actually a way of controlling our, it's a way of controlling, I almost want to say, our identity. Because for me, at least, I wanted to get things so much. I was like super eager to learn and understand, that the eagerness to understand and categorize all the things that our brain wants to do actually took me out of the experience of, I think, receiving the information in my body. And that's really where the power is.
Yeah.
Is it receiving and the being open. and trusting without knowing.
Mhm. Well, it's so fascinating because there's nothing that we live in an attraction based universe. There's nothing that we can actually get. Everything happens at the level of receptivity and allowing and attraction. It's all attraction based. So the more we can melt into ourselves and surrender and allow our energy fields to open and expand, the more we can receive the information at the somatic level, in which case we truly experience it, because then we can see it in our vision, we feel it, we watch our reality change because we're embodying it and resonating with it. And so through the experience of that, we're, oh, okay, I know what this is now. Oh, okay, I can trust this now. I've lived into this. I've felt it. I've seen my reality shift as a result of me embodying these frequencies or these knowings. And we can trust it. But if we try to go in with the mind, it's not going to work. We're just going to hit up against a wall every single time until we melt and let it fill out. So in that kind of a scenario, I would say maybe one of the best things to do is to go, what is the thing that you want to get? And then ask the question, okay, I want to understand with laser precision and clarity, fill in the blank, and then create a space to allow it to reveal itself instead of then trying to penetrate with the mind.
Beautiful. And this is also part of, as we were speaking earlier about claiming, deciding what you want and be ready to receive it, the frequency, our power, but also being open to it. And I was sharing with you the other day that I've claimed to the universe and my reality that the truth will be presented to me before I take any big actions. Yeah. And so what I've started to see is I'm not needing to figure things out. Instead, I'm just open and I'm experiencing and allowing in all areas of my life. And then whatever needs to be revealed for it to be a strong yes or a strong no is like literally like right before deciding something, boom, in my face. So I'm like, oh, beautiful. Because I'm open and receptive to the information. But if I'm trying to control it and figure it out, there would be no space for me to see it clearly or to even have the joy and the flow and the abundance of the openness.
Yes, that's so huge, because when we're trying to control, we can only see at the surface level of things. We wouldn't even be able to perceive it if we weren't open when it revealed itself. And that's where, you choose something for a long time, and because there's either there's a pattern playing out or there's some type of control mechanism in place by, one or both people will say it's in a relationship situation. You can't even see to the other layers of information that are available because that energy creates a contraction. And so then all this other depth that is available isn't being accessed. So when the field is open, all of a sudden, all this other data can start to flood in and come in, and you're an open vessel, so you're ready to receive it. And then, so let's play with this a little bit. So there's this notion of opening up and allowing the truth of a situation to reveal itself to us. And then there is also a level of openness where once the situation reveals its truth to us, depending on whether or not we choose this, we can be masterful magicians and influence the situation through our openness. So it's like, if I'm open fully and I'm receiving all of life as source, guess what life is going to present to me? Life is going to present itself to me as source. But if I get into what I'm hearing and receiving and fixating on that instead of the source of the situation, then I'm probably going to create projections, or that person's going to start to embody that thing that I'm focusing on. And that's going to become what's prominent in my reality. And that's what's going to happen in my experience with them. But if I can stay open to the truth, if I can stay open to the source and see beyond the patterns that are presenting, then that actually creates a space to actually help that being evolve into that highest expression of themselves. And so then it becomes a choice of, where are they on their evolutionary journey? And do I actually want to hold that space open for them to do? I mean, I would imagine that we would do that anyways out of love in any scenario. But if it's like a situation like a relationship, then, it's a little bit of a different story. You probably want to select someone who's resonating with you. But, yeah.
And to add to what you're saying, like so much yes, like, whew, yes. the self-sorting, the opening, the source, all of the things. And also going back to power, going back to our solar plex, our internal power and our self-expression, and the opening to truth, because the truth is always being presented to us. And I believe it's first through our intuition. Mm-hmm. But if we don't honor our own internal power of what we know, we close ourselves off from seeing the truth very like very clearly presented to us. And I know for me, in my journey over the past few months, there were a few areas where I wasn't honoring my intuition because I didn't want to, because I was in a space of being really open, but also closing that down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I trusted my intuition and took action, which is where all your power comes from, right? And that's what I notice every time I listen and honor, there's an opening and the truth is revealed and it's easy to accept. So as soon as I took action on my reaction of my intuition, which the inner knowing, the inner intelligence, my own power, the truth was presented itself in a big way. And I was like, oh, but it couldn't have been presented that strongly until I took action. So when we talk about fear of failure, fear of putting ourselves out there, fear of the unknown or whatever, if we're open, amazing. And we need to listen to our intuition. And when we take action on our intuition, that is where our power is. And that is where the clarity can present itself so clearly for you. But when we don't honor it, we find out the hard way oftentimes, and we get into these repeated cycles of whatever that is for us. And so taking action on what we do know is where our true power is always. And openness and stillness in the storm to see clearly. Mm-hmm. And everything else that we talked about. It's all connected. Then when we live our truth and take action based on our intuition, life becomes easier. We have more choice because we can see clearly. We're not in it, because when we're in it, we're blinded. And things are easier. We don't have to learn lessons the hard way.
Yeah, I think there's something really palpable also about just having a very high standard and for excellence in our own embodiment and in our world. And we can see if something aligns to that, or if something has a willingness to expand into that, and so that keeps it really clear for me. I know exactly what I want, and that's what I'm basing things off of in my reality. Mm-hmm. And if there's something that I don't want that presents itself, I'm able to fully stay in my power and go that I won't allow that in my reality. And I'm okay with that, because I know that no matter what, source is bringing me exactly what I want from some channel, from some avenue, somewhere. So there's never ever a need to settle or choose out of alignment, because that's all fear-based, and that's based in deservedness and value, self-value. Do I value myself enough to stay in my own power and trust and receive my own magnificence and allow it to be mirrored and reflected back to me from all dimensional, from every dimensional facet of my life? Because usually in a situation, well, it's beautiful, because what you're speaking to is a pure reflection of where, like I said, you just weren't receiving your own value fully. And that's really the shift that needed to happen, to be like, wait, because you already knew. You knew intuitively, you knew intellectually. It was just about letting yourself receive your own value and opening into your worth as a woman and what you can have and what you will have, and just letting yourself go into that next phase. So a lot of it is self-value based, and self-empowerment and self-trust and universal trust also. If I let go of this thing that isn't quite fulfilling for me, will what I desire come into me? And do I trust that explicitly enough to, make those micro choices and macro choices to keep aligning to what that is? And even in the container of things that are going really well, this is where the micro choices come in, where you get to say, whether it's in your energetic space or in a conversation, this is what I'm okay with, this is what I'm not okay with, and I want to communicate that. and like receive what your response is for that, to see if everything's resonant and aligned. And in either regard, it's all held in love, and it's okay. Because whether it's through this experience or another experience, it's still going to unfold itself. So staying with our truth consistently when it comes to the really big choices where it's, you know, a whole relationship unto itself, and when it's the micro choices where it's just a decision within the relationship.
True. Yes, sister. Love you so much. Love our conversations. So to sum up today's conversation, let's do that.
Okay.
So we talked about being open and closed. We talked about the power of trust and Mother Nature, and we are a vehicle for change, and we are just as strong as Mother Nature itself. We talked about intuition, the difference between intuition and our mind taking over, what comes in first and what to watch out for. We talked about revisiting the past or not revisiting the past in order to move forward. We talked about knowing where we want to go in order to create it, but not forcing it, being open to what needs to be presented next and shown. We talked about trying to control and how that is the block of our power and our self-expression and creates more friction. What else did we talk about? We talked about our frequency. We receive what we're ready for. What else?
Fields of perception. What I'm just seeing right now is just like a huge power surge, like plugging ourselves in to our flow of genius, to our flow of source, because everything that we've talked about is around that notion of being open to trust that flow to come through and exude through us and live into that in our reality. And that'll blow out all the patterns eventually. I was going to blow out, it'll clear out, it'll clean up, it'll move through all the patterns. But as that's happening, being very conscientious and aware of ourselves, whether or not what we're seeing is true. Is it truth? Is it aligned to source, or is it a pattern? And just being with that process as we allow more and more of our power to come on board, so that we can live into paradise.
And that is it. The paradise is here now. It's just whether or not we are giving ourselves permission and access to be in the flow with it and co-create.
Yes, boom.
Another beautiful conversation with you, Solara. Love you so much. Sending you all so much love and wisdom and grace and openness and space and co-creation and everything that you want. And it's your experience. So create what you want with it. Take what you love, let go of what you don't. And we'll see you in the next conversation.
Yes. Thank you, beautiful soul. I love you so, so, so much. And I hope that everyone just received a gorgeous outpouring of divinely activated cosmic power and nectar, and that you receive all the juicy gems and jewels that you need in your journey. I love you so much. And I hope that you have a gorgeous evening, and we will connect again next week.
You too, love.
Love you. Mwah.
Thank you.